Good morning, everyone, and welcome to part 4 of the Work Zone Traffic Control and Safety course. My name is Mike Fitch with the Ohio LTAP Center here at ODOT, and we appreciate your participation in this training. Please note that today's session is the fourth of a 5-part webinar series with part 5 on Thursday. As we get started, please take a moment to locate the questions box in the GoToWebinar panel. During the course presentation, please use the questions box to send in any questions you might have, and I'll be dispatching those periodically to the instructor. Please note also that the handouts section of your GoToWebinar panel includes several PDF resources for reference. With that, we will go ahead and turn things over to our instructor, Ray Brushart, who is a program manager and safety circuit rider here at the Ohio LTAP Center. Ray, hello.
Hello, Mike. Thank you very much for the introduction.
Yes.
And welcome back, everybody. Here we are already at part 4. Gee, it just seems like yesterday we were in part 1, doesn't it? Well, anyway, so we wrapped up part 3. We were talking about how we needed to include the pedestrians in the design of our temporary traffic control plans, and we got through some of those slides. Especially when we're talking about arterial streets in the cities that have sidewalks and intersections and things like that. And so we're going to pick it up from there. We were having a discussion on the setting up of work zones on our arterial streets in the cities. So especially where there's intersections. So as we move along, what we have here is typical application number 23, and it's showing a left lane closure on the far side of an intersection. Remember, we talked about different parts of the intersection, whether it be near side or far side or in the intersection. And so all the typical applications, they have these different variables placed on different typical applications. And so here they show the work zone is on the far side of the intersection in the left lane. And they're showing the typical setup here. And so here's one way to do it. And so in the advanced warning area, you see the road work ahead sign, the left lane closed ahead, and then the sign that shows the symbol of the left lane merging over. And then if you look beyond that, in this part, they show a cone taper in the transition area, and they're able to put the regulatory signs here that say left lane must turn left, and they created a turn pocket here. And so the left turning vehicles can get into this pocket and make their left turn. And then if we looked at the notes page on this, there would actually be a discussion on whether or not you need that pocket created. And that's why it's important to not only look at the drawing of the typical application, but read the notes page as well. So when you're dealing with a multiple lane arterial intersection, this is not a boilerplate for every intersection. You need to see if they have a heavy left turn turning movement volume or not. And so there's some discussion on how you could handle turning movements at the intersection. And sometimes they even say just eliminate turning movements if it's, in certain situations. So, and then they show another way to do it in the typical application number 22 where they talk about a right lane closure on the far side of an intersection. So, and since it's an arterial street with high volumes, they're using an arrow panel here to get people over into the right lane as well. And so the other directions of traffic, they only get like a road work ahead sign because their movements really aren't affected by this work zone. The only people that are really affected are the people in the northbound left lane. So they need to get over and then either decide are they turning left or going straight through. So that's how that's handled. Another thing that does routinely handled in near the downtown of a city is a road closure and with a detour associated with it. So sometimes we have to close the entire street down, but then of course with all the volume of traffic, we need to reroute them. And so this typical application number 20 walks you through the process of how to sign for the detour. So you can see if you start down here at the bottom of the page, for instance, and read these signs, and it walks you through getting your detour around this closed street. And of course, there's a notes page associated with that as well. And then here's an example of where the work zone is located right in the middle of the intersection. So here we have the intersection of two-lane roadways. And so they are setting it up in a way it kind of looks like a roundabout, but each leg has a cone taper on it to get people around. And you got the regulatory signs here showing to keep to the right. So there are no left turns in this example. So kind of looks like a roundabout, really. And then we do have roundabouts. Now you won't find a typical application in the temporary traffic control manual, at least not in Ohio's. But as we all know, roundabouts have become very common in Ohio. So you can bet that the next update will have some typical applications for roundabout, lane closures and roundabout. And I got this example from the website called workzonesafety.org. And you can also find information on in the National Work Zone Safety Information Clearinghouse. So I wrote this information on the slide there on the left. And so there's different sizes of roundabouts. So you have a single lane roundabout that's shown here, and they show how they go about closing the single lane. They show the hatched out area where the work is actually taking place, and it involves a flagger and some signage here. So they actually set up a flagging operation in this particular situation. And then here we have a multi-lane roundabout. And with the multi-lane roundabout, we don't use flaggers. We're going to use our temporary traffic control devices and an arrow panel. And they're showing a length L. So we're dealing with basically a right lane closure here with the same signs that you have in a typical right lane closure on a multi-lane road. And it's got the arrow panel, merging taper, etc. And so what they've done here is they've completely closed the inside lane of the roundabout. And so they've went from a 2-lane roundabout to a 1-lane. And so they want to make sure that all the traffic is down to 1 lane as they approach this roundabout. So this Work Zone Safety Information Clearinghouse is a very neat website. They have all kinds of work zone information. So it's you might want to save that to your favorites on your computer. Okay, let's talk about, I got some pictures of a substandard traffic control. It was easy to get this picture because it was right down the street from my office. So this is West Broad Street at the I-70 ramp. So situation is there's probably some utility work going on in a manhole there. And let's see, I got pictures from different angles. So from this angle, you can see you got 3 lanes going in one direction, and they're in the center lane. So some of the things that raise a red flag, like in this first picture, is just seems kind of dangerous how they're working right in front of that truck. So if anybody rear-ended the truck, then the truck would plow into these guys. So I don't like to see that. I know a lot of times I bring this up and the workers say, well, we need the truck right there. So I don't know, maybe they can figure out a way how to get more of a buffer in between the truck and the workspace. And then in this picture, they're showing they have an aero board, which is good, but with this particular arrow turned on, when the motorists see that, they think that they should get over here into the left lane. And this is a pretty interesting area on West Broad Street because you got a heavy right turning volume of traffic right here. That's why even though this arrow is telling them to get over here, these guys are thinking, well, I'm not getting over there because I got to get on the on-ramp here. So this arrow board should have been a two-headed arrow. Let's try it this way, like that. So that way the motorists know that they have a choice on going around them to the left or to the right. So maybe they could have coned off better and had a little bit more buffer space here before the truck as well. They've got a bunch of cones here, so why not use them to create more of a buffer space? And maybe they could upgrade the cones to the new ones so they're brighter and have the 2 bands of retro reflectivity as well. Okay, so that was the urban arterial streets. And then we have our next, we'll talk about major arterials, freeways, and expressways. How many of you out there have a section of a freeway or a freeway look-alike in your jurisdiction that you maintain? Let's see, maybe you can put it in the chat box if you do. So some of the things that we know about these types of roads is that we're dealing with high speeds and high volumes of traffic, and they demand the highest type of control and modification of typical applications to supplement the recommended array of different temporary traffic control devices. So a little bit about our multi-lane roads. We got the multi-lane roadways, the typical applications begin at number 30. So here is number 30, and it's showing us the interior lane closure on a multi-lane street. So on this 4-lane roadway, they're closing both middle lanes, the northbound left and southbound left. You can also use this to help you figure out how to close just one of the either northbound or southbound left lanes. So you've got your advanced warning area with the road work ahead. They're showing the symbol of the left lane merging over, but you could also put in a 3 sign series, and then the second sign would say left lane closed ahead and then have the merging symbol. Then they have the merging taper followed by the arrow board, and they have that same setup southbound. So, and then of course there's the notes page that talks about the standards, guidance, and options to consider for your particular situation. Then here's a work zone setup that we rarely see, seems like, in Ohio, but we're dealing with, you might see this in Cleveland. I know they used to have some of their arterial streets, and they had permanent signals up, so they had more lanes coming into town in the mornings, and then they reversed that middle lane to go northbound in the evening. But it's the same idea here, a lane closure on a street with uneven directional volumes. And so it's a 4-lane roadway. They're closing the northbound right lane. And so what they've done here is they use the shifting arrows, and they're shifting traffic over a lane. And so that we're actually using the southbound left lane as the northbound left lane to get around the work zone, and we didn't lose a lane. So maybe this was something that had to be done in the morning, and we really needed that lane for the morning rush hour to get maybe to downtown. And so they set it up this way so they didn't lose that capacity for that lane. And then the southbound traffic was the typical left lane closure that we just saw. And then here is a situation where we're closing both northbound lanes, and then so it's half the road. We're closing down half the road, and then we're shifting traffic over into the southbound left lane temporarily. So to do that, down here at the beginning of the work zone, we do the typical right lane closure and get everybody over into this lane. And then depending on the speed limit, we use either half L or L. Remember from last week, we discussed 50 miles per hour is the breaking point between half L and L. And so in this case, it must be 45 miles per hour or less. So they're using half L. And so then they use the shifting arrows to shift them over into the southbound left and then shift them back. And then again, the southbound traffic is they're having a typical left lane closure to get everybody over into the right lane. So then we move on and talk about our freeways and expressways. So some of the design considerations in this instance includes high speeds, high volumes, access control, so there's no driveways. We just have interchanges. So here's an example where we're working on the shoulder of a freeway. And as you can see, we're not closing any of the lanes. We're just working on the shoulder. And so they're showing our signage package with road work ahead, right shoulder closed, and another right shoulder closed. And they show the distances between each one. So remember A and B, we can find those, what those distances are. That's why in your handouts, I posted there in your handouts a PDF of the guidelines for traffic control in work zone. So if you look at page 17 of that handout, you'll see that chart that shows you how to figure out A, B, and C. And so on a freeway, this is where we're talking about A and B have different values. So it might be like a half mile and a quarter mile spacing for A and B. And so then they show this taper here is a shoulder taper. So that's equal to 1/3 the length of a merging taper. And then because it's a freeway, we also put in a barrier here. And so they talk about options because, again, we're dealing with high speeds, high volumes. We got to use our options. So the barrier with lights make it safer. And then we have a right lane closure on our freeways. And so it looks a lot like the right lane closure on our urban streets, same signs and stuff. It's just that the A, B, and C is different for the signage, and the length of the taper is pretty long as well. So let's take a look at what I'm talking about there. So if we open up our guidelines for traffic control in work zones, remember I said to turn to page 17. So if we scroll down here we are on page 17. This the top table on page 17 here on the right shows you how to find A, B, and C. So A, B, and C are across the top of this table. And then we look at expressway and freeway here. So distance A is 1,000 feet and B is 1,500 feet. That's quarter mile. And if you ever see C on the freeway, then that's a half mile. So that's different than all the other types of roads where A, B, and C have equal values. And then the length of a taper, Let's see what that is. Let's say it's 65 miles per hour here. We use the bottom table on page 17. It's a merging taper at 65. So here's 65. We go over to the third column. It says merging taper. And we see the length of that merging taper is 780 feet. If it was 70 miles an hour, it would be 840 feet. So that's the kind of sign spacing and lengths of tapers that we're dealing with on our freeway. And then we have sometimes on our freeways that have 3 and 4 lanes, sometimes we need to close more than one lane in these situations, and that's why we look at our typical application 37 to help us do that. So here's our double lane closure on a multi-lane freeway. We start off with like the typical right lane closure, and then we go into a tangent space that's twice the length of the taper, and then we have another merging taper, and they both have their arrow boards. Let me get back to that. And then it has a buffer space here, and also the truck mounted attenuator as an option there because it's high speed. And then of course we sometimes have to set up work zones near the interchanges, either before or after. And so this one is shows us an example of work in the vicinity of an exit ramp. So this is typical application number 42. It shows us how we recreate the theoretical gore area with our drums right here, and how, because this exit ramp is open, so we want to make sure we have our exit ramp open. So you can add a sign that says exit ramp open. See, it shows right in the typical application, exit open. And then the advanced warning sign that says exit open ahead. And then we're closing a lane, so it shows us the typical right lane closure signage package. So then we have that's freeways, and then we're back to talking about our most basic roadways, our 2-lane, 2-way operations. Sometimes we have to neck our freeways down to 2 lanes. You've probably seen that on a lot of our ODOT projects where we have a median crossover. So we didn't have to start from scratch in that design. We actually have a typical application for that median crossover. So we have this typical application shows us how to do that. It shows us our signage package, placement of the arrow board, and the design of the placement of the drums, and exactly how that crossover is shaped, and then how to bring them back over into the northbound lanes, and use of barriers and barricades, do not enter signs. So that's where we get the information on how to create that crossover. So that's all I got for freeways. We have any questions on the freeway sections?
Ray, looking at the questions box, we don't see any
All right.
at the moment.
Did anybody say that they do have a freeway lookalike in their jurisdiction?
Yes, yes.
All right, that's good. So let's move on then. If no further questions, let's move along and start talking about our flagging operations. And this is where we're talking about mostly our 2-lane rural roads, but you can also flag on 2-lane streets inside the village or a city. And so there are differences between each one. So, whether or not you're creating a flagging operation for a 35 mile per hour operation or a 55 mile per hour operation, there's some big differences between those. So let's get into this. So traffic flagging, the flagger is a very important person. They're critical to traffic safety. Consequences of improper flagging may be severe. And of course, flaggers have very important responsibilities. So why is flagging such an important profession? That's because lots of people depend on the flagger's clear guidance. Then we have a picture of the flagger standing where he's supposed to be standing, on the shoulder of the roadway at the beginning of a cone taper. Different people depend on the flagger: the roadway workers, the motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists, and of course the flagger himself or herself. And it's important that we follow standard and uniform flagging procedures. We don't want you to create your own method of flagging. We want you to flag the way that it shows us how to do that in the temporary traffic control manual. If we do that, then we're increasing motorist respect, promoting a uniform response, and minimizing drivers' confusion. Some important rules to go by, and there are at least 10 very important rules of the flagger inside that the guidelines for traffic control in work zones booklet. Towards the end of that booklet is a list of I think it's the top 10 checklist for flaggers, but and some of these are on there. Like a flagger must stay alert at all times, face oncoming traffic, be highly visible with the proper um, vest. And at ODOT we require a hard hat as well, but that's up to each agency whether or not they require that. And of course, the proper stop, slow paddle, and you must stand on the shoulder, and we want you to be out of the path of the vehicles. And not just anybody can be a flagger. You need to pick somebody that has the ability to communicate instructions and ability to maneuver quickly, ability to control signaling devices and apply safe traffic control practices, and the ability to recognize dangerous traffic situations and be able to warn others. Let's take a look at our standard flagger equipment. You got your stop slow paddle that you see there, which is retro reflectorized for night use. They typically come in two sizes, 18 by 18 inches and 24 by 24. Of course, if I was you, I wouldn't even mess around with the 18 by 18. Let's just go ahead and get the 24 by 24, right? And then it's attached to a rigid handle that is from 5 feet to 7 feet in height. So here's what the stop slow paddle looks like on both sides. How about the use of flags? Well, the manual tells us that the use of flags should be limited to emergency situations, intersections, and low speed and or low volume locations, which can best be controlled by a single flagger. So we don't want you using flags all the time, just in these situations. And so there's the preferred flagger location on the shoulder of the road at the beginning of the cone taper. Let's take a look at some pictures. They kind of might be funny, but they're really not funny. So here's a guy here. Does it look like the way he's doing it? What if he needed to escape very quickly? Could he do that? Probably not. He's got his car parked behind him, which would block him. And of course, the car that's parked there is a hazard, not just for him, but also the errant motorist that would crash into that. So we don't want you to park your vehicles there at the flagger station. How about here? Let's play a game. Can you find the flagger? Well, we'd have to look pretty closely, but the flagger is actually standing back here behind this dump truck. And so what he's done in this situation is he stuck the stop sign down into an old faded tar-covered cone and no buffer space. And he's standing here. He wants everybody to stop and then he lets them know if he thinks they can make it. So that's not the way to do it. I think that guy got a special week's vacation when this was discovered by our safety guy in the district. Of course, it was unpaid. And then here's a picture of the flagger standing up here by where the work is actually taking place in the middle of the road. So we don't want that to be the case. He should be well in advance of the work taking place. Then here's a flagger standing in the middle of the road with his back to traffic. No cones that are visible. So this is definitely not how we want you to do it. How about here? We have a guy reading a book on the tailgate. And again, he does have a nice cone though. I like that cone, very bright and shiny. But he's in a bad position for a distracted motorist to come flying up on him at 55 miles an hour. So that's definitely not how we want to do that. And again, there's a vehicle here in the lane for somebody to crash into. That's not good. We'll get into what that truck should have on it here in a little bit and where it should be located. And this guy's, he needed a break. No one came to give him a break, so he just had to sit down. So we want to make sure we give our flaggers a break. You know, don't let them go. The manual says every 2 hours at the most, but that must be if you really dislike the guy to make him go 2 hours in the hot sun. Let's give our flaggers a break and maybe some water and stuff. Here's a picture of a flagger turning their back to traffic. That's not good. Another guy relaxing in the shade, and he has a faded out orange flag, so that's probably wouldn't be very noticeable to the oncoming traffic. That's not good. So it's important that everybody have flagger training, but you know, it's good if you can get certified, but we don't require certification of flaggers in Ohio. I actually took the certification course that was offered through ATSA. You see ATSA listed here on the screen. That stands for American Traffic Safety Services Association. They offer a very good training and certification. You can just go to the ATSA website and you'll see that they come to Ohio a few times a year. And so if you needed someone to be certified, that would be the best way to do that. Let's talk about some of the concerns for the flagger. One is the drivers. So we need to be concerned that the drivers are aware that we're out there flagging. And so we need to do the best we can to get their attention. That's why we have the advanced warning area with our signs and our proper flagging vest and the proper cone taper, because drivers are, as you can see, sometimes they're a little drowsy or they're preoccupied with other things. And so we need to do our best to try and get their attention and establish eye contact with the drivers as they approach. They want to make their own decisions. They don't like to be stopped because we're slowing them down and making them late. You know, they have better places to be than stopped on the road. Sometimes they let you know that. And so controlling them is difficult. Some factors that affect the driver's ability, as you see in the pictures, that's a bad thing when the sun gets right into the motor's eyes, and especially if they have a dirty windshield, their visibility of the roadway is affected. So you might want to think about that if you're happen to be setting up your work zone where the motorists are driving into the sun. To really make sure that you've got the advanced warning area nailed, and all the cones and the newest cones and your vest and all that. But they also might be under the influence or the road itself. So maybe maybe that's a hazard in itself. Potholes or ice or something like that, heavy rain. And of course, the age of the driver and the experience of the driver um, plays on their ability to see you, to notice you. And who even knows if they teach about this stuff in today's driver's ed class, right? So, they should definitely have a whole section on work zones and driver's ed. So hopefully they don't skip that in driver's ed. So we never assume that a driver sees you. That's the main point of this slide. Never assume they see you. Want to get their attention, establish eye contact, and provide them with your order of either to stop or slow down. There is a section, an entire section in the temporary traffic control manual on flagging and flagger control. It's chapter 6E. Is there a message, a question? Let me see. I see something flashing here.
Yeah, Ray, I just sent a general message to
Okay.
the
All right.
audience there. Yep.
All right. And so the manual tells us that when operations are such that signs, signals, and barricades do not provide the necessary protection on or adjacent to a highway or street, flaggers or other appropriate traffic controls shall be provided. And signaling directions by flaggers shall conform to the OMUTCD. So your signaling directions are clearly shown in the manual, and also the PDF of the guidelines for traffic control in work zones that I gave you as a handout. So the best way to remember all the stuff you need to know about flagging is to remember the ABCs of flagging. That's the simplest way to do it. ABCs of flagging. So A stands for advance warning, B stands for be visible and alert, and C stands for control. So let's talk about the advance warning area. This is where we let the public know that you are there. So we need to install the advance warning area before you start the flagging operation. So the signs that we need to see in that advance warning area that are clearly shown in typical application number 10 begins with the road work ahead sign or the utility work ahead sign. And then comes the 1 lane road ahead sign, and then the flagger symbol sign. And then if you're working on a high-speed roadway, 45 to 55 miles an hour, we want you to include this sign in the mix. It says, be prepared to stop. So we would put this sign in advance of the flagger symbol sign. And of course, the sign says the use of this sign is optional. So we learned before that options are what we use to make the work zone as safe as possible. And we use the options in high-speed situations and in situations where there's sight distance restriction. So when you're a flagger on a 2-lane road and there's hills and curves, you need to be visible. And so you need to stand where you can be seen before the hills or curves, and then also have this sign. Another little trick to be visible for the signs is to place one of your best tones beside that sign to draw attention to that sign. So here's a picture of what the advanced warning sign series would look like in a low speed situation. Those signs are about 100 feet apart. How about here? Here we have an urban setting, but it looks like we have our signs on the sidewalk. So unless that sidewalk is closed, that's probably not a good idea. Probably want to put them by the curb on the pavement. We also want to think about, can the motorist actually see the sign? So here we have a sign that's blocked by a pole. So they could have placed that better so that the motorist could see it. Think about that. Another way to make your work zone as safe as possible, that's something kind of relatively new on the scene, are these portable temporary rumble strips. And the Virginia Department of Transportation, they require the use of these in these high-speed two-lane rural flagging areas. So let's take a look at this YouTube video. Mike, are you there? So we'll take a look at this video and learn about portable
Yeah.
temporary rumble strip. I think I can do this, right? So if I hit
Yes.
sharing
Yep.
and then I hit this and then I hit this and then this and then this. All right. I thought that was a pretty interesting video, and it's very informative of when the PTRS are required and situations where they're not and it should not be used. Let me see if I can go back to my screen. How's that? All right.
Hey, Ray, we have a question.
All right.
Sean is asking, how new is that work zone traffic control?
For the portable temporary rumble strips, they're relatively new. They're in our manual and our you can find information on them in our manual and also on the ODOT's roadway engineering webpage. And but as far as this video, I think it's just a few years old. But when that's when I guess when they first started becoming required in certain situations in the state of Virginia. So, but as you heard in the video, what the reasons are behind these things is they make the flagging operation significantly safer and especially protecting you from drowsy and distracted drivers. And so drowsy and distracted drivers are especially unsafe on our high-speed two-lane rural roads. So, and that's important for work zones in those situations because usually the drivers on these two-lane rural roads, they're driving that road every day for many years, and they're not expecting a work zone, so they're usually off in la land as they're driving, and um, if they don't see the signs, and they'll definitely feel the rumble strip. So, but to answer the question, they're relatively new, but they've been around long enough to be in our temporary traffic control manual, and of course, there's more information, especially for ODOT projects, on the ODOT Office of Roadway Engineering's webpage. There's a lot of different examples of different things on their website. I definitely suggest checking that out. Okay. So that is a part of the advanced warning area. That's why I included it in there. So that was the A. And then let's move on to the B, which is be visible and alert. We want to make sure that the public sees you, the flagger, and so you need to have the proper apparel and equipment. So here's some things to consider here. What is the main hazard of flagging? It says motorists kill about 20 flaggers each year. So flagging can be dangerous. Some of the things that are dangerous are the high-speed traffic, angry or aggressive drivers. And after seeing a flagger, a motorist going 60 miles per hour needs almost 400 feet to stop. So those are some, that's a good reason why we have our 500-foot spacing requirements on our advanced warning area, and the space between the last sign, the flagger symbol sign, and the flagger is 500 feet as well. Also hills. If you have some two-lane roads in your area that have hills and curves, you need to take a position in advance of the hill and make sure you are visible to approaching traffic. So never take a position over the crest of a hill. I got some information here on straight from the manual about the safety apparel for the flagger. You shall wear high visibility safety apparel that meets the performance class 2 or 3 requirements. We just saw a video from the Department of Transportation of Virginia, and they've already required their flaggers to wear class 3 all the time. They don't even mess around with class 2. So if you want to, if you abide by the state of Virginia's requirements, then you're doing a good job, because they're pretty much ahead of other states and how they require things before other states do. So That's why if I'm always looking for something for safety, one of the first things I do is see what they're doing over there in Virginia. So you can always check their page out as well. But maybe on the next round of the manual, when it gets updated, we'll have some of the things that they do as well as requirements for our requirements. So your apparel has to meet the ANSI, which stands for American National Standard for High Visibility Apparel and Headwear. Their requirements of 107-2004. So that I took this directly from the manual on part 6, page 647. So they have an entire section on that page that you can reference for more information on that. So here's some examples of apparel that meets the standards. And these look like they might meet the standards, but they actually don't. So the only way to know for sure that they meet the standards is it should be listed on the tag of the apparel. So if you look at the tag, like here on the right, it actually says up here. Okay, this was taken a few years ago, but that says 1999. But if your tag meets it, it'll say 107-2004. So here's an example of a flagger wearing Class 3 apparel. As you can see, the Class 3 typically includes the trousers to go with the vest or the top. So when we're working on our two-way roads, we need to discourage drivers from moving into the open lane because head-on collisions are possible. So the way we do that is we have a shorter type of taper with the cones that are spaced closer together. So the length of our taper in a flagging operation ranges from 50-foot minimum to 100-foot maximum. And we use the shorter tapers to encourage drivers to slow down. It should appear to the motorists as they approach that taper that it's a wall of cones across their lane. That's what we're shooting for. So here's a drawing to depict that. So here we have the length of the taper from 50-foot minimum to 100-foot maximum. And the flagger is standing on the shoulder at the beginning of that taper. So then we move on to the C of ABC, and that stands for control. A flagger is considered a legal traffic control device that must be obeyed. And the flagger must possess these 3 basic flagging skills. We need to be able to stop traffic, release traffic, and slow traffic. And we do all that in a uniform manner. So this page is taken from the manual and also the guidelines for traffic control in work zones. And it shows us the proper techniques of how to stop traffic. You'll see that when we stop traffic, we point the slow part of the stop slow paddle directly at the motorist. We extend our right arm out, straight out, and then we raise our left hand with the palm facing the motorist. Then we're establishing eye contact with the motorist as best we can. And they also show how to properly do that with a red flag. So you're pointing the flag straight out with the flag hanging down. It's usually a weighted flag, so it doesn't wave much in the wind. And you're raising your left hand, the palm facing the motorist. And then to release and slow traffic, we turn the stop paddle around to slow. And then we can move our left hand, and point them in a direction so that they can proceed. And then with a flag, we raise and lower the flag from our arms straight out down. So we're raising and lowering it to slow traffic. So a little bit more, another picture here showing how to stop traffic, standing on the shoulder, displaying the stop with palm out, face traffic, make eye contact. And then after you have a couple of vehicles stopped, then and only then can you move out to the center line so that approaching vehicles can see you in case you're blocked by that traffic. Then to release traffic, as you can see, he's got a paddle turned to slow and he's pointing with his left hand out into the open lanes for them to proceed. We don't want you to wave the sign at drivers. That confuses them. So we don't want to see this where the flagger is standing out in the middle of the road. Do not become a target. So typically, the most common flagging operation involves 2 flaggers, and communication and teamwork is essential. Usually there's 1 flagger is in charge. So typically they have a 2-way radio like you see there. And in typical application number 10, they show a 2 flagger operation and where each flagger stands. And again, there's no arrow boards in this situation. Showing the flagger standing at the beginning of the cone taper in the closed lane. And then in the open lane, the flagger is standing on the shoulder of the road at this location. And it shows the signage for the open lane as well. And again, we want to see the end roadwork sign in this situation so the motorists know that they can resume their normal driving and not have to worry about any more flaggers. So here's a typical flagging operation in a 40-mile-per-hour situation. So there's different ways of communicating between the flaggers. Maybe it's maybe you're working on a straight roadway where you can see each other. That you can use the sight method. Maybe you can take your hat off and wave it at the other flagger if he can see you. If he can't, then you can use 2-way radios. And then as a last case scenario, we have the flag carrying method where you actually give a flag to the last car that you're allowing through, and then that car would give the flag to the flagger at the other end. So the sight methods is where you can see each other at all times. 2-way radio is the most common when you can't see each other. That's especially needed when you have multiple flaggers. Maybe there's an intersection in the middle of the flagging operation. Maybe it's a long lane closure and you want to bring spare batteries with you. Then as the last resort, we have the flag carrying method where you hand the flag to the last car that's allowed to pass, and then that driver hands the flag to the second flagger at the other end. That gives them the all clear signal to release their traffic. Sometimes we have a situation where we need an advanced flagger, and the advanced flagger may need to stop each vehicle to advise them of the situation that lies ahead and give them special instructions. So if you're the advanced flagger, you need to always be alert and considerate and avoid unnecessary conversations. Then we have our single flagger situation. So sometimes we have a situation where we only need 1 flagger, and you have to meet these conditions before you have a single flagger. So it has to be a low volume road with good visibility in each direction, a very short workspace, and a short duration, which is like an hour or less, and then low speed traffic. So if you have a single flagger operation, you can see in this picture where the flagger is standing directly across from the workspace on the shoulder of the road. so that they are visible to traffic coming in both directions. So here's a picture of a single flagging operation. You can see he's got some cones at his feet to draw attention to him. And you definitely need to be visible to traffic coming from both directions. And you would never step into traffic. There's no reason why you should step into traffic in this situation. Then you have multiple access points. As you can see, sometimes you have a long operation with intersections in between. So you may be necessary to add additional flaggers at these cross streets so that the flagger can direct traffic in the proper direction, so that cars aren't turning in, making a turn out where traffic might be coming at them. Then here's a situation where we're flagging near a roadway railroad crossing, and the flaggers need to be able to communicate in order for them to ensure that we don't allow traffic to stop on the tracks. So that would be the objective there. Sometimes we need to flag at night, and for flagging at night, we need to make some changes and some equipment changes. One is we need you to have a flashlight with a glow cone, and you need to have class 3 retro-reflectorized garment, and your stop slow paddle needs to be retro-reflectorized, and you also need auxiliary lighting shining on the flagger. So here would be a picture of a flagging operation at night. He has I think his might be a stop slow paddle that's not only retro-reflectorized, but has lights around the edge that are flashing as well. As you can see, the auxiliary lighting is shining on him. Here's a situation where we're flagging and an emergency squad needs to get through. So we want to always make sure we provide the ambulance the right of way as soon as possible. However, we have to consider, not just at any time, maybe you might actually have to stop the EMS squad. So if there's something going on that would be unsafe for them. So we want to make sure that we think about that. We also need to handle emergency situations so as to anticipate the unexpected and be prepared to respond. Of course, you always want to protect yourself. You always have your escape route planned in an emergency situation. But if a crash does happen, we need to be able to respond. When I say emergencies, I'm talking about maybe a driver is disobeying your command to stop, and maybe they've caused a crash. So we have to be able to protect ourselves and then also handle the crash. We need to respond and communicate that to the right people. So if a crash happens, you want to notify your supervisor and call for help as soon as possible. But we also need to continue to communicate to the motorists out there as well. So we need to also continue to control traffic and stay in contact with the other flaggers. So there's a situation where the flagger is standing out there, not on the shoulder of the road, but out towards the middle of the road. We don't really want to see that. So we could have done a better job here of not parking vehicles right here. And this taper isn't right either. We need it to be 50 to 100 feet and go all the way from the shoulder of the road out to the center line, and have at least 6 cones and maximum spacing of 20 feet, as is shown on the table on page 17, the middle table. So that's flagging. Do we have any questions about flagging?
Ray, at the moment, we do not, but
All right.
everyone is welcome to submit questions if you have any.
All right. Well, let's continue on then. Let's talk about mobile operations. So here we have a picture of a typical mobile operation. We're doing some a filling of a pothole with our spray-on patching, which you'll probably see a lot of this out there now and in the next few weeks because of our freezing and thawing of the roadways that creates a lot of potholes. So it's important to think about your operation that you're planning to handle all these potholes. And so again, we need to pick a typical application as the basis for our design in these operations. You should determine, are you picking a mobile operation for that, or is it going to be more stationary, a lane closure? And so then you would pick one of the typical applications based upon your decision of your technique of filling in the potholes. So when we talk about moving and mobile operations, we're talking about work that moves intermittently or continuously. Like patching potholes would be intermittent, and pavement marking striping would be continuous. So the work area and the workers are in motion. So we need to think about, how do we guide traffic when we are moving along with them, though we're moving at a slower speed. So that's what we're going to cover in this section. So moving versus mobile operation. So moving and mobile, they're the same for practical purposes, but there is a fine distinction. Moving operations are a special case of mobile operations. So mobile would be where you might be stopping for a while and then continuing on. So moving is when you're actually moving all the time, like pavement marking, striping. So mobile operations, that's where you stay in one location. You're stationary for fewer than 15 minutes. And it's usually during the day. And so examples are manhole inspection, aerial cable replacement, overhead light repair, like you see there in the picture, traffic signal bulb changes, or maybe even filling potholes, right? So these operations, moving operations, are similar to mobile, except the work is done during the movement. Moving operations where the work is done during the movement, and the stops are fewer. And the only time you stop is usually to resupply or make adjustments to your equipment. So like when you're painting the white edge lines of a roadway, for instance. And so not only pavement marking striping, but street sweeping is another moving operation. Mowing the grass is a moving operation. Maybe surveying or litter and trash pickup. So moving and mobile operations, they require proper traffic control procedures, and we need to really focus so we do not surprise the motorists as they're driving along and they arrive at our operation. So we don't like surprises. So that's why work vehicles usually move slower than regular traffic, so that makes us a target for trouble. So the manual addresses this in different ways. It talks about the specific location of our moving and mobile operation in relation to where we are in the right of way. Maybe we're off the shoulder, maybe we're on the shoulder, or maybe we're in a lane. And so each one of those has a different typical application, as you may suspect. Also, the volume of the roadways and the speed of traffic and time of day is important in our consideration of our design and our needs for temporary traffic control. And visibility of our operation is definitely a key factor. We need to be highly visible to the motorists as they approach. So when I say highly visible, I'm talking about not just all the temporary traffic control devices, but also the workers. They need to be visible. And we need to provide advance warning so the public knows there is roadway maintenance ahead. And we need to have the proper traffic control so everyone knows how to maneuver around us. Or maybe they're not going to maneuver around us. Maybe they just need to stay behind us for a while. So they need to know that. So to enhance our vehicle visibility, we have lights and beacons and strobes and retroreflective markings. One thing I wanted to point out about that video that we just watched, where they're laying out the portable temporary rumble strips, is that as they were installing them, they were in a mobile operation at that point. So you saw their work truck had high intensity flashing strobes on them. And those are required. So as you're installing the advanced warning area, of course, that was like a flagging operation, but you are in a mobile operation at that point. So you have to abide by, like in that case, it was typical application number 17, which is a mobile operation on a 2-lane road. That's what they were abiding by with their work truck having their flashing strobes on. That's a standard. So you got lights and beacons, strobes, and retroreflective markings on your work truck. So there's a picture of a work truck that's meeting the standards for a mobile operation on a multi-lane roadway. So they've got the sign on the back, and they've got retroreflective markings on their truck. They got an arrow board and the flashing beacons that they have. And then we can enhance that. We can go above and beyond that by providing advance warning before they arrive at us. So we can put signs or cones down in advance of our mobile operation. Even if we're mowing, when it comes to mobile operations, your sign should be specific about what's going on. So like you should put out signs that say mowing ahead on the side of a road to let people know that there's mowing ahead. And then the sign on the right here on the slide shows a man with a shovel. That lets people know that there's some pothole patching going on. And so we especially need to consider the visibility when we're dealing with curved roadways or hilly roadways, because we have to consider that the motorists need enough time to make adjustments. Let's take a look at different types of streets and what we need on each type of street. So if we have a low speed residential area, then we don't need a big elaborate work zone setup. We can get by with just our flashing lights, maybe even one sign on the side of the road before our operation at the most. But then as we step it up and get into suburban type streets, then we need better advance warning. And so we need to think about that. Then we have high speed facilities. Again, that's 45 miles per hour and higher. When we get into those situations, then we're going to need a shadow vehicle with an arrow panel. And this helps to protect workers. We even have this is actually a truck mounted attenuator on the back of this truck, a crash cushion. And then we have our mobile operations on a shoulder. And it's not a lane closure. And so when we use an arrow panel, we want it in caution mode, like you see here, the 4 corners flashing. And we have the signage that says shoulder work. And then here is the typical application number 17 I referenced earlier. This is when you're putting the signs out for a flagging operation, you are a mobile operation at that point. So you really need to abide by this as you're putting your signs out, especially if you're blocking a lane. I mean, if you're not blocking a lane, then you can do the shoulder work. But as you saw in that video, they were actually blocking a lane when they were out there, at least half the lane. And so they needed to have strobes on and a sign on the back. And so this is what we're talking about here. So, and then the page walks you through the standards and guidance and options. And then we have the mobile operation on multi-lane roadway. So this is like a freeway here, but they have you start out on the shoulder with an arrow board, and then the next shadow vehicle is in the lane with an arrow board. So work vehicles here. And so each vehicle has a truck mounted attenuator. So as you can see, that you really have to look closely and see what is actually required and what's optional. So here's this first one is on the shoulder. It says optional. And but the next one is in the lane. It's not optional. And then the work truck, since it's being protected by the shadow vehicle, it says optional. Again, optional, as we learned earlier, is how we make your work zone as safe as possible. So just because it says optional doesn't mean, okay, I'm not going to use it. You have to consider the speed and volumes of traffic and things like that, sight distance. And then here's like mowing. For like mowing situations, you have a work beyond the shoulder. So you're not in the lane, you're not on the shoulder, you're beyond the shoulder. So here's the work area. And so maybe all you need is one sign that says road work ahead. Okay, so this slide says use common sense. And basically it's, getting that into the habit of putting yourself in the driver's seat and thinking about how are they going to experience your work zone. Think about it from their perspective. It's so important. And think about how much advance warning would you need. It says how much time and distance do drivers have to adjust their speed. So it's definitely very important to have a plan before you leave the garage that day. How are you going to set up your work zone? One of the things that you can do is, this isn't 1960 anymore. I guess they tell me it's 2021 now. So we have a lot of technology at our fingertips and it's free. So why not take advantage of it? So one of the things you can do is use Google Maps, right? Google Maps is a very good tool for uh, helping you to quickly come up with a work zone design before you leave the garage. That way you know how you're going to set up traffic. You can decide on a typical application and you can load up your work truck with the proper signs, for instance, and all the temporary traffic control devices you need that day. So as an example, let's go to Google Maps. If I go to just type in Google Maps, for instance, you go there and let all of it download here. Okay, so you don't have to just use the map view. You can use the satellite view. And so you can zoom in on areas. Let's see, who was here today? We had Miamisburg in the house. So let's see, Miamisburg. See if I can find it. Where is Miamisburg? It's over here somewhere, right? Let's see. I was going to find Miamisburg and zoom in on it.
Ray, it was just there on the screen.
Oh, it was?
Uh-huh.
Which way am I going?
Go along 71 south.
You mean 75?
71 or 75. Yeah.
Yeah, there's 75. There's Dayton. It's north of Dayton, isn't it?
I believe it's south.
It's south? Okay. So you saw it down this way?
Mm-hmm.
There's Miamisburg. I like it when you're right all the time, Mike. Okay, so if we zoomed in on Miamisburg, let's see what sort of streets they have here. They got one of their major arterials is State Route 725, which is also called Central Avenue. And so by using Google Maps, I can check out this street, Central Avenue. I can see how many lanes are involved. It's a 3-lane roadway. Okay, so that's another thing I can talk about is the lane closure on a 3-lane roadway. You don't really find out very much information in our temporary traffic control manual. And that's why our friends in the ODOT Office of Roadway Engineering actually have developed some temporary traffic control plans for 3-lane roads. So that's a resource for you there. So when you're on a 3-lane roadway and you're closing a lane, you might be closing a through lane, or you might be working in this 2-way left turn lane. And they have work zone setups for both of those situations. And so, or you could even set up a flagging operation if you're closing 2 out of the through lane, 2 out of the 3 lanes. So that's something to consider. Also, you can measure distances with Google Maps. So you can actually lay out your work zone before you leave the garage. You'll know exactly where to put your sign. So like, for instance, what's the distance between North 6th Street and 7th Street? Well, to find that out, I can put my arrow over here at 6th Street and I hit the right button on my mouse. And when I do that, this box pops up. And so if I come down to the bottom of this box is measure distance. So I click on measure distance with my left button. But then the next place I click on is going to give me a measurement. So if I click here at 7th Street, did I do that? Yes, it tells me that it's exactly 295 feet from this intersection to that intersection. And then it delineates these white lines along the way, and you can set up like there's 100 and there's 200, and you can set up, you'll know where to put the signs, and then you can clear that. And as you zoom in, you can see this street's really nice because they've got a sidewalk and they've got like the grass lawn area between the sidewalk and the curb, and that makes a great place to put your signs. So that's some things that you can think about as you're trying to figure out how to set up your work zone before you leave the garage. That way, we don't want you to leave the garage and just say, well, I'm going to wing it when I get out there. We want you to, we really add safety to your work zone design if we have it all planned out before you get there. So there's really no excuse to not have a plan in mind before you leave your garage. All right. Well, I see we're pretty much right at the time to end. So if there aren't any more questions, then I guess this would be, oh, see, we have something. Do we have a question?
Ray, I had copied a question to you in the chat
Okay.
box there, but the person who asked the question said, never mind, he just answered it. So I think
Oh.
I think by talking through what you just did, I think
I
that
saw the
question's been
question about the
answered.
software. There is several software packages out there that help you design your work zone. Like you can actually print it out and it shows the signs you're using and things like that. But if you don't have that, then you can use the Google Maps. Between the Google Maps, so you can look at the street and use your typical applications, you can come up with pretty good idea of how your work zone is going to be set up, and then using those tables on page 17 as far as sign spacing requirements and the length of tapers and things like that. So we'll get into more of that when we meet on Thursday, because on Thursday we'll go have a short lesson on street closures, and then we'll get into some exercises and see if we can, we'll put you to the test on what you've learned and see if you can come up with some ideas on how to set up work zones in different situations. So I want to thank everybody for listening in today on this webinar. And I think I may have screwed up sending the certificates out late last night. Some of them were right and some of them they had the wrong heading on the email, but I did send out all the certificates for 1 and 2, although there were some people from Miamisburg. I think I left off of part 1, but don't worry, I'm getting caught up. And by late Thursday afternoon, you'll have all the certificates for parts 1 through 5. So that's all I got. So I guess we'll adjourn for today, and we'll see you Thursday morning, right, Mike?
Yes. Thanks, Ray. And we look forward to part 5 of this series on Thursday. So thanks everybody for attending today.
All right. Bye-bye.